Blizzard has clearly taken inspiration from Sun Tzu's Art of War, and they are falling apart while doing good at the same time.
So last week, news came out that Microsoft has moved forward with efforts to make Blizzard more prolific. The plan is to launch new games for their established IPs far more frequently than has been the case. Blizzard is notorious for taking their time ever since the early 2000s, with there being 10 years between the launches of Diablos 3 and 4, 12 years between StarCrafts 1 and 2, and it's been 22 years since we got a new Warcraft RTS. You feeling old yet? I sure am. Now compare.
This sounds like an absolutely horrible idea, to be completely honest, because the thing about Blizzard was, yeah, they took their sweet time cooking a game, but when they cooked a game, it was typically very polished, interesting, and good. But that's no longer the case, is it? Now Blizzard is cooking like a meth addict would. AK, not really good, not really safe, not really polished, and kinda rushed. So now you're telling me Blizzard, when they have failed the typical Blizzard thing that they have typically done, is gonna just throw that all away and just mass produce trash? Because that's kind of what it sounds like currently.
Compare that with their release cadence in the late 90s and early 2000s. In the 10-year span between 94 and 2004, they launched Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2, Diablo, StarCraft, Diablo 2, Warcraft 3, and the World of Warcraft. That was 7 games within 10 years. In the 20 years since World of Warcraft,
World of Warcraft was made in 3 years or something, by the way, or less than 3 years. That's insane.
there have been 6 new games with StarCraft 2, Diablo 3, Hearthstone, Heroes of the Storm, Overwatch, and most recently Diablo 4. Now longer development.
And half of these games are pretty much effectively dead. What a great graveyard.
Development times over the past 2 decades have been a trend across the entire industry. This isn't Blizzard specific. What is Blizzard specific though is the fact that for a while it felt like that long wait was worth it. But the company isn't quite known nowadays as the genre-defining developer they used to be, and it seems like
Exactly. And I don't see how they're gonna overstep this hurdle. They're gonna probably trip and it's gonna be worse.
Microsoft, after spending $72 billion in the...
Also, he didn't mention everyone's favorite game, Diablo Immortal. Yeah. How could you not mention that? That absolute travesty.
Acquisition, they're not that interested in a release cadence of 6 new games over the course of the next 20 years. Now, I don't think rushing out their mainline installments is going to be the answer. Had they launched Diablo 4 a year or 2 earlier, there likely would have been far less content in the game at release, of course, right? I do think Blizzard should take their time, as much time as they need.
And Diablo 4 is still a very, very unoptimized disaster. So many systems just interfere with other systems and concepts and make other systems almost nigh on useless. It's kind of crazy.
For those big games, for their mainline installments, take all the time you want for those games to make them as good as possible. That should be the focus, right? However, there is another option that interests me, and that would be Blizzard working on games that are smaller in scope, that take less time to develop, and more importantly, ones where they're willing to take more chances, not to play it as safe and to try new things. Well, it turns out that might be exactly what's going on. Microsoft has some big plans. According to sources speaking with Windows Central, Microsoft has recently created a new internal team made up of members throughout Activision Blizzard King. This group's entire focus is to...
Wait. Activision King is the ones that made Candy Crush. Are they gonna put people who made Candy Crush in charge of, I don't know, for example, Warcraft 3? Yeah, that seems like a failure just ready to happen at any given second.
To create new games based on Blizzard's popular franchises. But these wouldn't be new big mainline games. We're not talking about StarCraft 3 and Warcraft 4.
Are we talking about mobile games in that case? Because there is no reasonable reason why you would ever take the people from Candy Crush and put them on other games unless it was a cash grab mobile disaster.
These would be smaller games in their scope, scale, budget, and ideally as well in their development time. So basically, we're talking about spin-offs for Warcraft, Diablo, and StarCraft in entirely new genres, released far more frequently than once every 10 years or 10 plus years. This is a pretty exciting proposition. Now, to quote the article, sources tell me that Microsoft is keen to explore and experiment finding success out of smaller teams that are also integrated with the larger org, almost Nintendo style for seamless collaboration. Microsoft and other big publishers are increasingly concerned about the monstrously ballooning cost facing AAA game development, and having studios cross-collaborate more closely is one.
Well, yeah, the ballooning cost is literally your own damn fault. We're not asking you to get a full bodysuit so you can replicate someone's movements in a cutscene. No one wants that. You know what we want? Dialogue that is not the equivalent of a diarrhea disaster. Okay, that's what we want. It's very simple. All we want is Star Wars Outlaws to not be a woke mess. You know? That female character, disgusting. There's so many examples of this. You need so little to satisfy us, and yet you are intentionally doing everything to piss us off, and thus making your games more expensive and more likely to fail. Now, this is a bold business strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off.
Way Microsoft is exploring reducing cost. Now, later on, he adds that this new internal Blizzard studio is entirely geared up for agility and trying to break free of the bureaucratic bloat that often comes with larger teams. And this is absolutely a truth that we see in action very often across the games industry, with these huge studios moving at a snail's pace, taking weeks or months or even longer to release updates, patches, and bug fixes, while simultaneously in that same industry, we're seeing much smaller teams working on their own indie games or AA games that can release updates far more frequently. There is a lot of red tape when a development studio gets to be as big as Blizzard, and while that red tape is there for a reason, it can and often does tend to really slow things up when it comes to these studios being geared up for agility, being flexible and responsive and updating on a frequent basis. So the entire initiative here actually sounds and reminds me a lot of what Riot has been doing with Riot Forge, where they're releasing these smaller scale games based on their League of Legends IP, and some of these have seen some great success, like really highly rated. A lot of people really enjoy them, so it's really exciting. And I think for Blizzard in particular, as someone who's been a fan of pretty much all of their franchises for the past 20, 30 plus years, there's a lot of potential. Like, they've actually already been playing around with this idea, right, of making these smaller scale spin-offs. Obviously, you could certainly argue that Hearthstone is exactly that. They took the Warcraft IP, they turned it into a collectible card game reminiscent of Magic the Gathering, but with
Yeah, that's true.
a Warcraft twist. I mean, it's not exactly like Magic, right? But you get the picture. They took the IP and they spun it off into a smaller.
Hey, thank God they didn't go the same route as Magic, otherwise they would be in an absolute disaster area currently. Keep in mind, Hearthstone is still the current card game online that everyone wants to be like, because they are still technically dominating everything.
Smaller version of it, a smaller scale thing. There's obviously the mobile stuff as well. Bleh, you know, we're talking about Diablo Immortal, Warcraft, Rumble. I don't really care at all about the mobile portion of Blizzard's IPs, but if we're talking about getting more indie/AA quality PC or console focused titles, there's just so much potential. There's so much possibility. In fact, I think we've seen.
It's true, there is a lot of potential and possibility, but man, why are the people behind Candy Crush in charge of this? This makes me question it so hard.
Seen what that could mean with Plunderstorm. I think this was a great showcase of that. Now, if you happen to miss the craze, Plunderstorm was a genuinely fun battle royale. I had a blast playing it.
Yeah, for roughly 2 days, and then Plunderstorm died. There's a reason that Blizzard didn't actually launch Plunderstorm as its own solo thing, because if they did that, it would not even have the audience that it did have in the first place, because again, it was tied to World of Warcraft. If you were playing World of Warcraft, you could go play Plunderstorm if you're bored, and that's what a lot of people did. But then Plunderstorm completely just expectedly, I should say, decided to dive headfirst into a black hole and never be heard again. How long did it take? A couple of days for it to get boring, and literally a week for it to start completely just melting away.
Blizzard released this as a temporary game mode inside of the WoW client. You would drop in with just a basic attack, go around killing NPCs to level up, collecting spells along the way to build up a loadout of different abilities, all while fighting in lobbies of 60 players with a closing circle pushing you all together and trying to stay alive to be the last one standing. It was a traditional battle royale, but in the World of Warcraft. But it wasn't just WoW in a battle royale area. Like, they really, in a lot of ways, made it its own thing. You weren't actually logging into WoW and like going up to an NPC and queuing in. It was its own separate game inside of the WoW client. And like I said, it was actually really, really good. I think that if they made some tweaks and some adjustments and some polishing, it could very well be spun off into its own game.
That would probably die now instantaneously, considering everyone's already done with Plunderstorm. The people who played this the longest just were trying to farm the cosmetics in World of Warcraft. That's also what happened. Oh man, it was not... Plunderstorm is not that W people think it is. It's actually a complete L, and Blizzard knows it.
In fact, I know of a few people who have zero, actually less than zero interest in World of Warcraft. They do not care. They would never play that MMO, but they played and thoroughly enjoyed Plunderstorm. That's a really good sign. And I think they're just generally around the internet, there seemed to be a positive sentiment around Plunderstorm, besides the fact that it was locked behind a monthly subscription. I think if they spun off Plunderstorm into its own game, probably don't call it Plunderstorm, come up with another name, but make a World of Warcraft Battle Royale as its own free-to-play thing, you could probably just print money with that. In fact, frankly, I think that should be that'd be my suggestion, that this is the first thing that this new spin-off studio works on. It seems like...
Okay, you know what's the funniest part about this? I don't think anything competitive multiplayer is ever gonna work for Blizzard if it has PvP aspects to it. Again, Blizzard is never gonna balance a single game, a single mode, a single weapon, a single item. These people are... I don't know what's with Blizzard. People go there, work, and they instantaneously lose all of their ability to balance things. It's absolutely crazy. You just need to look at Season of Discovery, their latest attempt at actually balancing things, and people are just constantly shaking their heads and thinking, what the fuck are they doing? They're introducing these things that are overpowered, then they're nerfing things that are not overpowered, then they're buffing things that are overpowered, and vice versa constantly, and no one can get any rhyme or reason from it. Yeah, it's kind of insane.
Like an easy win there. But there's a few other ideas that I would personally love to see them take a crack at. How about a Warcraft-themed survival?
Also, Plunderstorm was so poorly balanced that day one there was already a well-established meta of what you need to do to win, and if you don't do it, you're probably gonna lose to someone who did it. That's how insane Plunderstorm's balance was.
Game, huh? Blizzard did spend 7 years laying the groundwork for a shared open world survival title. It was under a brand new IP, and well, that was scrapped earlier this year, unfortunately, when Microsoft had a big round of layoffs. I would imagine there's a possibility they could use some parts of this, rework it with Warcraft theming, and then spin it out into its own smaller scale survival game. Making use of past scrapped projects and turning them into something new is something that Blizzard has done in the past. Overwatch, most notably, was made from the remnants of Blizzard's sci-fi MMO code-named Titan. That game also, funnily enough, was canceled after roughly 7 years in development. Seems like that 7-year mark is the killer for a lot of Blizzard games if they're not going to release. And you know, survival games are also notoriously lower budget titles. A majority of the most popular survival games out there were made by relatively small teams with relatively little funding, talking things like Rust, Ark, and Valheim. These are smaller scale games, smaller budget, that seem to attract a massive audience. It's just a no-brainer. I've actually been waiting 30 years to chop trees as an orc and build my own base. Can you just make that happen, Blizzard? It can't. Come on,
They're gonna mess up the balance somehow. Trust me. You probably, well, you kind of want it, but you know it's gonna turn out bad.
Seriously. So yeah, I think a Warcraft survival game is the perfect type of thing that we could hope for from this initiative. But here's a few other ideas if we're spitballing here, just throwing darts, right? How about a StarCraft third-person action/shooter game? Just imagine Space Marine 2, but it's StarCraft, right? It's not even...
Okay, let's be real. Most of us have imagined something like that, and it does seem like that could have potential. But Blizzard doesn't do this for some reason. I mean, that just just don't make it an online microtransaction thing. Make it a co-op. Well, make it online. Make it like a co-op thing, exactly like Dark Tide or something like that. And that would probably be great. Has Blizzard done that? No. Have people asked for that forever? Yes. So make it make sense. No one can. It is what it is at the end of the day. Blizzard is just kind of really stupid. Again, Bobby Kotick, my spirit animal, literally was holding this shit show together on strings. Okay, duct tape, strings, and a lot of probably physical abuse. But you know, at least he did it properly. And now it's just a complete god knows what now currently. Okay, Vogue has infected Blizzard pretty hard. That was to be expected after that drama, and well, who knows what's gonna happen now. You're probably gonna get a lot of just fat ugly female characters in the future. Good luck.
Even that far of a leap, as the entire StarCraft franchise was originally a spin-off of Warhammer 40k. They're right there, just put the pieces together. How about like a Diablo-themed dungeon extraction game? Think about Dark and Darker Dungeonborn, but it's Diablo stuff. You got first person, you spawn in, you fight other players for loot, you extract, you could do this. How about a Vampire Survivors auto shooter battler thing? Any of their IPs could work from.
Now that actually I do want, because Vampire Survivors type of games they just work. Okay, that just is the way of life. They always work. People love it. It's amazing.
From that, heck, we could even see like a 2D side scroller, but it like Hollow Knight, but it's Diablo or Warcraft or something, right? Really, I think that they could just take a look at any of the popular indie or AA games and genres, and they could just create spin-offs of those using Blizzard IPs. If nothing else, I would love if that's what they just did that, and if we got some decent games out of it, that would be really cool. So that is all really interesting. Like I said, I think there's so much potential for cool things that this development team could work on. The Battle Royale and the survival games being the ones that are most immediately promising and appealing sounding to me. But at the same time, what's going on with Blizzard proper, right? The main development teams, what are they up to? Well, of course, all the existing
probably burning in hellfire like they deserve.
Stuff marches forward with them continuing support on current titles. World of Warcraft kicks off the first of a planned trilogy of expansion.
Dude, this trilogy I think is going to be so woke. Now, admittedly, it depends on how much woke there is and how much they will instantaneously forsake. But it's kind of really hard to tell. Again, the first part of this expansion, the main character is going to be a black half-elf female cripple or something like that. It's gonna be absolutely insanity.
For retail, launching the War Within later this month. And of course, Classic WoW and Hardcore WoW and Season of Discovery are likely to continue marching forward. Diablo 4 is also getting its first big expansion with Vessel of Hatred that is coming.
Vessel of Hatred seems like it's a new class. Okay, there's a huge problem with Diablo 4, okay? There is still potential there, but it just gets boring so fast. That's just the reality. If you cannot put your mind at a single super late game goal, you can't play Diablo 4. It just becomes boring and dull in 20 minutes. That is the reality of it. Like, Season 5 is an absolute complete shabazzle of a disaster, okay? They literally... Path of Exile, Last Epoch. When they have a season, you know what happens? Well, they introduce you to the season's mechanic in the first 5 minutes of the game. You know what Diablo 4 Season 5 did? They took the promising, something that actually looked not that bad, season mechanic, and they only allowed you to see it at the end game, pretty much effectively, which is crazy. And yes, I know it's not the end game, but considering when you actually get to see the mechanic, you're pretty much effectively at almost the complete end game, honestly. You're just not killing uber bosses. That's insane. And until that point, you have a story about some kind of woman who accidentally kills everyone she loves or something like that, and she's like, whoops! And you're like, it's fine, don't worry about it. Things happen. It's just complete opposite day, okay? It is stupid, it is dull, it is lame. and then you get to go through some of the most worst designed dungeons, but considering they didn't fire the people who make the dungeon in the first place, well, it is what it is. And then you have to do dungeons again for the glyph experience, and the dungeons are so poorly designed, it's insane. You go and see a branching path, and all of these paths lead to either... Oh, I can't. It's just so stupid. It's just so... it's just... And the worst part, this Vessel of Hatred is going to come out. There's going to be a new class. It's going to seem good for roughly 2 days, maybe, and then you're going to be like, okay, this is trash once again. The moment the sparkles wear off, it's GG.
In October, and Overwatch, StarCraft, and Hearthstone, they all still exist, or so I am told. But what else is the company up to? Well, as
yeah, if you're not playing Overwatch or Hearthstone currently, you're probably not just gonna play them in general. I mean, Overwatch actually has literally millions of players monthly, but I mean, who cares?
mentioned, they did have a survival game in development for about 7 years, but that got canceled last January when Microsoft announced a big round of layoffs. One of the most heavily affected groups was the vast majority of the development team for Project Odyssey, which was the code name for their survival game. Most of them unfortunately got fired.
I thought the door opened again. Wow, it's not even windy outside. What the hell?
And those who remained ended up moving on to other projects. This was a pretty big blow, especially considering from all we had heard, the game was actually shaping up nicely. Over the past 2 years or so, we have seen several leaked impressions.
You know why every time a canceled project appears in the minds of people, everyone's saying, oh, it was shaping up nicely? Because it's the developers, okay? The developers are not going to come out and typically say, oh, yeah, we were making this thing and it got canceled and good because it was complete trash. No, they're all going to be like, I tried so hard, I put so much effort in it, it was so great, it was going to be the next big thing. Yeah, no.
From playtesters, and they were all fairly positive. Also, there were a lot of ex-Blizzard employees and various people who are known for leaking info in the industry that spoke quite highly of Blizzard's in-development survival game as well. So the fact that this project seemingly was doing all right, but then got outright canned, that is a real shame. I think there's at least some part of the reason, however small, there might be some part of the reason for this cancellation due to the fact that it was a new IP. Now, when these layoffs took place, Phil Spencer said on a few occasions that going forward, they are going to be primarily focusing on Blizzard's strengths and in particular on their existing franchises. So maybe that survival game does get reworked and repurposed into a new Warcraft thing. Who knows? I'll keep it on my wish list. That's not all though, actually. Since the survival game got axed, we have caught wind of another new project in development at Blizzard. A few months ago, there were numerous job openings posted for a new, unannounced
I don't know about this.
open world Blizzard game. That's right. Positions available for the creative, narrative, and art directors, as well as concept artists, gameplay engineers, animators, combat designers, and design directors for both missions and combat AI. That is a lot of positions, and it is very clear that the game is still in very early development. In fact, it may still very well be in pre-production. We're also not sure if this is a new or existing franchise, although again, Microsoft has made it clear that they want to focus on existing ones, so I'm just going to assume as much. But we did get a tiny bit of information from these job postings. So with the missions and combat AI, it was made clear that this game is going to have a PvE focus. In the combat design roles, they mentioned one.
Good. I honestly am. I'm so done trying to expect anything good PvP focused from Blizzard. If Blizzard announces a PvP game, I'm like, I'll pass. Listen, I'll pass. Okay. I'll pass. I don't want FBI. Don't take me out. You know, I'm just saying I'll pass on a Blizzard PvP game. Okay. I'm done. I just want the PvE stuff from Blizzard. I couldn't care less. But anyway, considering we don't know much about this, whatever. Anyway, that was Force Gaming. 10 out of 10. Bye bye.